Sometimes students will comment that all the rules of algebra are confusing, and they are. So I've decided to go over some common questions or mistakes about expressions. Number one, x plus x. What happens here? Where are the coefficients? How do I know what to add? Whenever you have an x by itself or a negative x by itself, there's a 1 in front of it. Now that does not mean that x is 1, just that there are one of the x's. So 1x plus 1x would be 2x. Number 2, 7x minus 4y minus 3x plus 2y. When you do this problem, this is the same exact thing as adding negatives. When you subtract 4y, that's the same thing as adding a negative 4y. If those can be interchangeable in your head when you do these, it will help. So 7x minus 4y or plus negative 4y, same thing, minus 3x plus negative 3x, same thing, plus 2y. You look for your like terms and you collect like terms. So my x's, I have a 7x and a negative 3x. Notice how I always use the sign in front of the term. You had $7, you lost 3, now you have 4. 4x. Now the y's. Negative 4y and positive 2y. Again, notice how I take the sign, coefficient, and variable in my term. Sign, coefficient, and variable in my term. Negative 4y plus 2y, think money. You're 4 in the hole, you get 2 back. Now you're only 2 in the hole. Negative 2y. 4x minus 2y. Don't forget when you're doing the distributive property that you have to distribute the negative 2. If there is a negative in front of that number, a minus in front of that number, that also needs to be distributed when you multiply. So negative 2 times x is negative 2x. And negative 2 times positive 4, a negative times a positive is a negative, so that's negative 8. Negative 2x minus 8. Don't forget to distribute that negative. This number 4, this problem tricks people because they see 3 minus 2 and they want to put a 1 there. But remember your order of operation. Order of operation tells us to do parentheses, then multiplication, then addition or subtraction. So the other thing to be careful of is right between this 2 and a parenthesis, there is an implied multiplication. So order of operation, first we go and do the parenthesis. Well, this is a little bit misleading because we actually cannot add those two. They're not like terms, so we can't do anything with that parenthesis. So we have to use the distributive property. The distributive property tells us that we can take this negative 2 and distribute it. So what happens to the 3? Well, it just comes along down with us. So negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Negative 2 times a positive 2 is negative 4. So that's the first step. Then the second step is to add your like terms. I have a negative 2x, that's the only variable term, so that will stay. And then I have my constant terms, the 3 and the negative 4. Remember, think money. I had $3, I lose 4, now I'm 1 in the hole, minus 1. So my answer here, the simplified version, would be negative 2x minus 1. Number 5. If there's a minus sign or a negative sign in front of a parenthesis, what do I do with it? A couple of ways to think about this. The first way is I just think about distributing that negative. I have to make the x negative, and I have to make the 4 negative. Another way to think about this, some people put a 1 in front. It's like multiplying by negative 1. So negative 1 times x is negative 1x, or negative x, and negative 1 times negative 4 is negative 4. Either way, you get negative x minus 4. I tell students when they're adding like terms that the like terms have to be exactly the same in order to add them. But there's a little catch to that. Look at these two, 7xy plus 3yx. Students think that these aren't like terms because of the order, the xy and the yx. They actually are, because of the commutative property of multiplication. That's a fancy way of saying that it doesn't matter what order you multiply things in. For example, if I had 2 times 3, it would be 6. Or if I had 3 times 2, it would be 6. It doesn't matter what order I multiply those in. That's called the commutative property. It holds for multiplication and addition. So that means that xy is really the same as yx. So these are like terms, and I can add them. 7 of them plus 3 of them makes 10 of them. 10xy is your answer. Or you could write it 10yx. Same thing. Number 7, which are like terms. What you have to be careful of, you can have your variables in a different order, but if there are any exponents with those variables, they have to be with the right one. For example, here I have a b squared c. Which one is that a like term with? ab squared or acb squared? Well, let's see. I have to have an a b squared, and a c. This one has an a b squared, and a c. Remember, it doesn't matter what order they're in, but they have to be the same. This is not a like term. The squared is not with the b, it's with the c. So this and this are like terms. 7 of them plus 2 of them make 9 of them. And then this one, since it's not a like term, cannot be added. So we just write it there. It is now simplified. Number 8. Students think that they should distribute sometimes here. Distributive property only works if you have an addition or a subtraction problem in the parentheses. So on this problem that I just wrote, you would distribute. 4 times 3 is 12, plus 4 times x is 4x. 12 plus 4x, or 4x plus 12. This problem you do not distribute because there is no addition or subtraction problem in the parenthesis. So what do you do here? Well, all these things are just multiplied together. 4 times 3 times x. So we can simplify because we know that 4 times 3 is 12. So we can simplify this to 12x, which is our answer. Number 9. What happens when I multiply by a reciprocal? We have talked about this, but I will review it. Again, just like in problem number 8, I'm going to multiply 1/5 times 5 and simplify that. So 1/5 times 5. 5 written as a fraction is really 5/1. Multiplying fractions, it's no problem. First you do the top, then you do the bottom. 5/5. 5/5 reduces to 1. So 1/5 times 5 is really 1. So I have 1x. Usually when we have 1x, we just write it as a plain old x. 1x and x are the same thing. I've done a lot of math here. After a while, I just come to realize that when I multiply 5 by its reciprocal, 1/5, it's going to cancel out or give me a 1. So a lot of times I will do that in my head without writing out this math. Number 10, 2xy minus 2xy. What happens here? 2 of them minus 2 of them is none of them. I have some people who will write this, thinking that since there's nothing in front of the xy, that means 0xy. It doesn't. What this actually means is 1xy. That would be the answer to this problem. (3xy minus 2xy equals 1xy, or just xy. So what does happen here? 2xy minus 2xy equals nothing. Or you could write 0xy. But what will happen here is 0 times anything will become 0. So 0xy just becomes 0. 2xy minus 2xy is 0.